abandoned building looms silently as the corridors stretch into darkness. Every footstep echoes unnaturally. Dust drifts through flickering light, and a faint creak hints that the walls themselves may be listening. A stairwell descends into deeper darkness, metal railings rusted and squeaking. Each step echoes endlessly, while a faint draft carries whispers that seem to float just beyond perception, making the silence feel alive. The corridor opens into a cluttered storage room. Broken furniture casts twisted shadows, and the flickering lights make the space feel alive. Every corner seems to stretch unnaturally, as if hiding something unseen. A narrow side passage appears, its walls lined with peeling wallpaper. Shadows bend strangely around a cracked mirror, reflecting only darkness. The air grows colder, carrying faint whispers that make the silence feel suffocating. A forgotten office room lies ahead. Rusted cabinets tilt dangerously, papers litter the floor, and the broken fluorescent lights hum faintly. The air feels thick, as though the room itself is holding a secret. A shattered window reveals a foggy rooftop. Moonlight glances off rusted pipes and scattered debris. The wind howls faintly, carrying echoes that feel too deliberate, as though the building itself is observing. The corridor bends sharply, revealing a door hanging off its hinges. The air grows colder. Faint scratching sounds echo through the darkness, and every shadow seems to stretch and twist unnaturally. A room filled with shattered mirrors stretches before you. Reflections twist unnaturally, and the air feels alive with movement. Every flicker of light and shadow seems deliberate, as if unseen eyes watch every step. A faint stairwell emerges at the corridor's end, descending into darkness. Water drips echo endlessly. The walls seem to pulse with each step, drawing you further into the unseen, whispering secrets that may never be heard. At the bottom, a dark doorway yawns open. A faint flicker inside casts unnatural shadows. The air feels thick with anticipation, as though the building itself is waiting for something to cross the threshold. The room beyond is empty, but heavy with silence. Dust swirls in the faint light, and the shadows seem to stretch unnaturally across broken furniture, creating shapes that feel alive and impossible. A narrow passage opens beyond the room, walls cracked and peeling. Faint scratching echoes down the corridor, and the shadows twist in ways that defy logic, as though the space itself is breathing. The corridor leads to a collapsed archway, rubble piled high. Faint whispers ride the draft, carrying unintelligible words. Every shadow seems purposeful, as though unseen eyes are guiding you toward some unknown end. A hallway beyond the rubble stretches into near total darkness. Faint light flickers from a distant bulb, and every creak and whisper amplifies unnaturally, making the walls feel alive and oppressive. The final corridor opens into a small room. Broken furniture and shattered windows cast jagged shadows. The air feels heavy with anticipation, as if something unseen is holding its breath, waiting. A final door stands slightly ajar, revealing darkness beyond. Faint flickering light hints at movement, but nothing emerges. The building exhales a cold, silent breath, leaving the corridor and its secrets behind. A dense fog blankets the abandoned forest path. Twisted tree branches loom overhead, and faint shadows flicker across the damp ground. Every rustle of leaves makes the silence feel alive, as though the woods are watching. A broken sign leans against a gnarled tree, faded letters barely legible. The fog curls around it like a living thing, and distant shadows seem to move independently, suggesting the forest is far from empty. A narrow creek runs beside the path, its surface reflecting distorted shapes in the fog. Occasional ripples shift unnaturally, as if unseen forces stir the water, and every splash echoes far too clearly through the silence. A fallen tree blocks the path, its bark cracked and damp. Fog curls around its massive trunk, and shadows crawl across the roots like long, twisting fingers. The forest seems aware of every step, A distant silhouette of a collapsed cabin appears through the fog. Its broken windows and sagging roof loom like silent witnesses. The air feels thick, carrying whispers that seem almost deliberate. Branches overhead twist unnaturally, and the fog thickens around them. Faint, distant whispers ride the wind, and shadows along the path appear to bend and elongate, as if responding to an invisible presence. A narrow wooden bridge crosses the creek, warped and partially rotted. Each step seems to creak far too loudly. Fog drifts across the surface, and reflections in the water below twist unnaturally. The path leads to a clearing, moonlight barely breaking through the fog. Broken rocks and twisted roots scatter across the ground, and shadows stretch and shrink as if the forest itself is breathing. A faint silhouette of a watchtower looms ahead, its wooden frame decayed, windows shattered. Fog curls through the broken structure, and every creak of wind makes it feel as though the tower is breathing. A narrow trail descends into a valley, thick fog obscuring the bottom. Shadows twist along rocks and roots, and faint dripping echoes through the trees, carrying a presence felt but unseen. A fallen sign lies across the path, half buried in moss. The fog curls around it, and shadows behind it seem to stretch, creating shapes that vanish the moment they are noticed. The trail curves sharply, revealing a small, abandoned stone well. Fog swirls around the rim, and shadows inside twist unnaturally, reflecting shapes that vanish when looked at directly. A fallen lantern rests beside a rotting tree. Its faint light flickers weakly through the fog, casting long shadows that stretch and curl across the damp leaves, making every step feel watched. The path narrows into a canyon of roots and rocks. Fog hangs thick, and shadows crawl along the walls of earth. Every faint sound seems amplified, echoing as though the forest itself listens. A ruined stone bridge arches over the creek. Fog swirls beneath it, and shadows stretch across the broken surface. The air feels alive with tension, as if the bridge itself remembers what passed here. The trail bends toward a shallow valley where fog thickens unnaturally. Twisted roots and jagged rocks obscure the ground, and shadows stretch into impossible shapes, creating an overwhelming sense of being watched. A fallen tree trunk bridges the creek, slick with moss. Fog drifts around it, and shadows ripple across its surface. Every step taken feels amplified, as if the forest itself is alert to movement. A ruined fence lies ahead, half swallowed by fog. Shadows crawl across the broken posts, and the faint wind carries whispers that make every rustle in the leaves feel like a deliberate signal. The path narrows further, flanked by twisted trees. Fog thickens, muffling sound. Shadows seem to twist in impossible angles, forming shapes that vanish when looked at directly. The forest feels alive, aware of every move. The trail opens to a silent clearing. Moonlight barely penetrates thick fog. Shadows twist across the wet leaves, and the forest exhales slowly, leaving behind a feeling of isolation and unseen presence, lingering long after you leave. The abandoned warehouse stands silent, its metal doors rattling in the wind. Shadows creep across the cracked floor, and faint flickering lights reveal glimpses of objects that seem to shift when unseen. A long row of shelving units stretches into darkness. Objects on the shelves appear distorted in the dim light, and shadows move independently, as if the room itself is breathing. The corridor between shelves narrows, and a faint hum resonates from unseen sources. Shadows twist strangely on the walls, and every flicker of light seems deliberate, creating shapes that vanish when looked at directly. A collapsed shelving unit lies ahead, revealing a dark opening behind. The air feels heavier here, filled with whispering drafts, and every shadow along the wall bends unnaturally, as though alive and watching. A faint light flickers near a stack of crates. Shadows twist across the walls, and every creak of the warehouse seems amplified, creating the illusion that the environment itself is moving and breathing. A narrow passage opens between two large shipping containers. The space is thick with shadows, and faint scratching sounds echo unpredictably, making each step feel as though the walls themselves are closing in. The passage widens into a room of broken pallets and debris. Shadows seem to stretch toward unseen corners, and every flicker of light hints at movement that disappears when directly observed. A broken window reveals the dark night outside. Fog drifts faintly through the opening, and shadows inside the room stretch unnaturally, creating shapes that seem to move on their own. A dimly lit corridor leads deeper into the warehouse. Faint sounds of dripping water echo, and shadows along the walls bend and twist in ways that make the space feel alive and aware. A small storage room appears, filled with broken barrels and crates. Shadows flicker against the walls, and every movement of dust or light feels deliberate, as though the environment is alive and observing. The room opens into a larger chamber, stacked with rusted machinery. Faint mechanical hums echo through the air, and shadows stretch across the floor, creating forms that vanish the instant they are noticed. A narrow catwalk above the machinery stretches into darkness. Shadows from the rusted rails twist unnaturally, and faint echoes of scraping metal suggest the structure itself is alive. The catwalk ends at a door hanging loosely on its hinges. Shadows crawl across the floor, and every flicker of light seems to form shapes that vanish when observed directly. Beyond the door, a narrow corridor leads deeper. Shadows bend and stretch as the lights flicker unpredictably. The air is thick with tension, as if the warehouse itself is aware of every step taken. The corridor opens into a final chamber, stacked with broken machinery and crates. Shadows dance across the walls, and the flickering lights reveal shapes that disappear the moment they are noticed. The warehouse exhales, silent and watching.